So we've mentioned that there are changes between Universal Analytics and GA4. I think some of the biggest impact that we're going to see is the change in metrics. So sadly, when they've gone from when we've gone from Universal Analytics to GA4, it isn't a straight switch. They've added new things in there, and some of the old stuff they've changed. Some they've just got rid of altogether. They like to keep us on our toes, do Google, obviously, but it's going to have an impact on the way that we work, the way that we report to yourselves. It's the way that you report to ownership groups as well. But which metrics have to change? Why? Why do we actually care? There's simply too many to go through in the webinar today, but what we've tried to do in the next few slides is pick out some that would be of relevance to the hotel industry, relevance to yourself. And so we've created a few lists. We've got some that are hospitality specific. We've got some useful new metrics to keep an eye out and look at. And then we've got some of the differences, the bigger differences between Universal Analytics and GA4, which Karen will go through now.
Cool. Thanks very much, Tristan. Yeah, lots of new names, lots of names that you might be familiar with, and you think, well, why are they not matching up? Because GA4 and Google like to keep us on our toes. But hopefully this will give you some insight into the metrics that you see within GA4 and how they relate to the kind of metrics that you guys use on a day-to-day basis. And I think the thing to say from the outset is this will only work. This kind of information that we're talking about and the kind of metrics that we're talking about will only work if your GA4 property is set up and linked to the booking engine appropriately. So, and we've had some fun trying to figure these out as well. So, if you're looking at length of stay from in GA4, that is, you'd see that in the metric quantity. Average order value is now your average purchase revenue, and you actually can't see that in standard reports within GA4. So there will be some work to be done, which we'll talk about later, around customizing a report to bring that information in. Your quantity is your quantity is your room night, so length of stay, and then your item name is your room type, and your item category is your rate plan. And of course, those things will only be set up correctly if the actual GA4 property has been set up correctly. One metric hasn't yet been passed over to GA4, fingers crossed it will, but is ADR. So what we recommend actually is creating a custom metric for that, either through Google Tag Manager. So the custom metric will be passing through the ADR to Google Analytics 4, or if you're using a tool like Looker Studio or a reporting tool, you can create ADR that way, and just by dividing the two metrics that bring ADR together. So those are the hospitality metrics. Unfortunately, ADR isn't there yet in GA4, but fingers crossed, as we said, they're bringing in new features all the time. So fingers crossed that'll be introduced. And if it is, we will absolutely let you know. We'll be singing from the top of the mountains in England. There are some new GA4 metrics as well, and I think it's really important to understand those because you'll see them a lot in default reporting. So they're important to know. So first of all, the one you'll see quite a lot is an engaged session. But let's take a step back. What exactly is a session? So a session is a period of time a user interacts with the website. So you'll see a session in lots of your reports, but you'll also see an engaged session. So an engaged session is when somebody has been on the site for longer than 10 seconds, or they've viewed more than 2 pages, or they've completed a conversion. So they may have gone and booked a night, for example. So that's important to know. You'll get engaged sessions will be lower than sessions, but it's a new metric that I thought you guys would like to know about. Average engagement time gives you an idea of how long somebody is engaged on the site. An engagement rate is engaged sessions divided by the number of sessions, which gives you a percentage, and the higher the percentage, the better. And that is a standard one you'll see on most reports. You may have, when you're in your old Universal Analytics, you may have seen pages per session, but that's actually now called views per session. And as it's currently as it stands, there's no unique pages per unique views per session. And I know it's really important when we're looking at sort of rate parity issues that we're focused on conversion rate on site. You have two metrics available to you now. One is which is session conversion rate, and the other one is user conversion rate. So there's two different ways of understanding how your site is performing. So, and again, you know, if you're looking to report up to ownership and you're trying to compare apples with apples, that's not exactly going to be the case when you're looking at Universal Analytics to Google Analytics 4. So for example, GA4 sessions is not the same as UA sessions. So GA4 sessions will continue where if you're on the site and you go into a new day, that will still count as one session, whereas in Universal Analytics, that will count as two. And then it's things like if you had, if you were tracking UTM parameters in UA, that would restart, that would start a new session, but in GA4, that doesn't. So you're not exactly comparing apples with apples there. And the same goes for users and total users. So users you'll see in GA4, but that's not actually total users. That's actually active users. You may have reported up to ownership as well about bounce rate. Bounce rate does exist in GA4, but the standard metric is engagement rate. And here's where it's really important to understand. Bounce rate is actually just the inverse of engagement rate. So if I had an engagement rate of 80%, the bounce rate would be 20%. And then, as I've just mentioned, your views are not the same as your unique page views. And just because Google likes to just change things up for fun, we all used to know about goals in Universal Analytics. They're actually called conversions. And you may have already had goals set up in Universal Analytics. So you need to make sure that they're actually transferred over. So it could be something like, tracking your newsletter subscriptions or tracking when somebody clicks to book. You need to make sure that you set that up within GA4 as a conversion rather than what you'd see in UA, which is goals. So those are some metrics to give you an idea of what's changed in GA4 and where you can find that information. I'll pass you on to Tristan now, who'll start the discussion on GA4 reports for hospitality and for hotels.